Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi again, everybody. Kevin Hicks here with EarthWorks. Got another EarthWorks podcast this week. I've actually got two scheduled this week, but I am really pumped to have John Murray on with me, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. We're going to take a twisty, turny road here with our conversation. We have a lot of overlapping interests. Ironically, I told him earlier, he's the only interview I've ever done that I've never met him in person or even on video. So we're flying blind and getting to know each other as we go. But John, thanks for joining me. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate your time. As I was writing down my questions, I'm thinking, how on earth does this guy have time for everything that he does? I mean, I know we're going to get into it here, but you've got a very unique situation where you're actually the equipment manager at two different golf clubs. Tell us about that.
I am primarily equipment manager at the Federal Club, which is a new design in Central Virginia.
Okay.
It's a bent grass course. And that's where I spend the vast majority of my time.
Mm-hmm.
I also kind of work graveyard, so to speak, at Kanawha Club, which is a very exclusive 9-hole par 3 golf course, about 20 minutes from the Federal Club.
Okay. And how did that come about, that you were able to swing that to where it wasn't a conflict? I mean, are you working 40 hours for the Federal Club and then you come over and do this in your spare time, or how does that work?
Exactly. So I'm basically at both courses most every weekday. I work, typical hours would be 7 to 3 or 4 at the Federal Club.
Okay.
And when I leave there, I come straight to Kanawha and work here until 8 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then drive home. On Tuesdays, we like to have a little face-to-face time with the superintendent here at Kanawha. So on Tuesdays, I've made arrangements to actually be here at 7 o'clock, work until about 11, and then I go over to the Federal Club and work the afternoon on Tuesdays.
So you at least get one day a week where you're face to face,
where we can communicate and plan. Sure. A lot of times we don't do a whole lot of planning. They don't need a whole lot of help from me as far as planning. They tell me what I need to do, and I try to get it done.
Right. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I assume you've got the same 24 hours in a day that all the rest of us do, but you obviously optimize it.
I get that a lot. I like to just stay very regimented in a schedule, very much a routine guy. When things go haywire and I have to start rearranging schedules to accommodate one thing or the other, it gets stressful and taxing, but for the most part, my wife works. She gets home 6:30, 7 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening. So I don't really miss a whole lot of FaceTime with her.
Right.
Both of my kids at this point now are freshly installed in college, and I'm a fledgling empty nester. Looking forward to the coming years, I guess maybe even rediscover myself, and my wife and I could do some things that we haven't had the chance to do.
Your youngest daughter started her freshman year, right, at James Madison?
She did.
And your oldest daughter still in school?
She is. She started her senior year at Virginia Commonwealth University.
Okay.
Really bright girl. She's planning to go to law school next year.
Wow, great.
So she's still got some time left, but yeah, she officially will graduate from VCU next year.
Makes you pretty proud, doesn't it, to see them succeed like that?
I couldn't be more proud.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Good for everything.
So in your bio, it also says that I don't know if this is current, that you were or you are a caddy as well at Kinloch.
I did. That's part of my journey. I guess for me, I got into the golf business well after I started playing golf. First of all, I'm an avid golfer. I love the game. I love seeing different courses in the architecture. I
Sure.
wouldn't call myself an architecture geek, but I do like seeing how golf courses are designed and the conditioning of those. So I've been an avid golfer since I think I took up the game about age 19. I was a late bloomer
Okay.
as far as golf players go. Got instantly addicted to the game and played all the time. But I worked in the playground equipment business most of my life. So, 18 years that I was with a playground equipment distributor, and we did a tremendous business, close to $10 million a year wholesale in just residential playground equipment.
So were you doing sales or manufacturing or
was
installs?
in management.
Okay.
I oversaw a couple warehouse distribution centers, 4 retail locations. And that was only half of our company. The other half was in Maryland and, had its own distribution network. But yeah, I did that up until 2009. In 2008, 2009, not a very good year. You have the housing bubble.
Yeah.
It exploded. 90% of our business generated from new home buyers.
Right.
You
Right.
buy a house, you got your kids, you come buy a play set for your new yard. That was our business. And, that's
Which
slowly
in
declined.
times like that is a luxury item, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it had a tremendous impact on that business.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, after all those years and effort, my time was up, and I understood. I saw it coming, which made it very stressful to know that it's coming at some point.
Right.
Can't do anything about it. In previous years, if sales were a little low, you could go drum up business somehow and make an impact. But there was nothing that I could have done to change the outcome of that part of my life.
Right.
So in 2009, I lost that job and started working for myself, doing various woodworking builds and commissions. And that became extremely difficult as well, to sell work, to create the work, to install the work, to do the business aspect of the work. It became a tremendous load on my family, and my family comes first above all else. And it got, I wouldn't say it drove a wedge between my wife and I, but it made things difficult. We had to make a lot of life changes. We had to change our spending habits. We had been in this house for 5 or 6 years. So I was on the hook for a house. I didn't want to sell the house. So I knew a guy that was out at Kinlock Golf Club. I started caddying at Kinlock Golf Club.
Okay.
Did that for really, I caddied a couple years ago, just a few times for the year, but I used to caddy 6 days a week, 2 bags a day, 10-mile walk every day. That became, after many years of doing that, just so I could pay my mortgage. I fell in love with that career. I would love to still be caddying right now.
Yeah.
But my knees aren't going to take it. My shoulders weren't going to take it. It's very much, for the most part, a young man's game.
Right.
And
right.
I'm not anymore. But I met a lot of great people, a lot of members, a lot of influential businessmen, and became good friends with a lot of them. No regrets being a caddy. I've been to a lot of different golf courses. As a result, I caddied at this point, I think 5 senior U.S. amateurs and a senior U.S. Open.
Wow.
As as a result of caddying at Kinloch. Kinloch was the host of the 2011 Senior Amateur.
Yeah.
Connected with a golfer out of Texas. We ended up losing in the quarterfinals of the Senior Am, but we developed a great relationship. And by way of that finish, he was exempt from the following Senior Amateur. So, of course, I went and caddied for him in that. Missed the cut. He qualified for the Senior U.S. Open.
So, well, let's just jump ahead to sports in your family. So your daughter, I don't know if your older daughter played, but your younger daughter was a heck of a good softball player, won a couple state championships. I told you I wanted to talk a little bit about youth sports and our experiences have kind of paralleled each other. I had my boys played, two of them played through high school, one of them played through college, but it's a grind. And I know a lot of the younger guys that listen to this have kids that are coming up and, wanted to kind of sprinkle a little reality into their thought process and the amount of money that you and I probably spent on travel ball and all these things. And at the end of the day, your daughter made the right choice for the right reasons to not continue playing in college. And you never look back. At least I never looked back, whether it was going to pan out or not. It's something we did, but it's a heck of a commitment. And I think at the end of the day, they always say that baseball always ends for everyone, or softball always ends for everyone. And it could be junior year of high school, or it could be, with the Olympics for your daughter, who knows, but
exactly.
But, I talk a little bit about that. What your memories are now that it's kind of in the rearview mirror a little bit, and hopefully you're not as sorrowful as my wife is. She still streams game from other.
I'm really sorrowful. It was a sad day watching that. It was bittersweet. She ended her high school career with a state championship. She literally advanced, won the semifinal on the same night that she was to walk the aisle and receive her diploma.
No kidding.
A semifinal, drove an hour and a half back down to Richmond, went through graduation ceremonies, drove back an hour and a half back to where softball was being hosted, and woke up the next morning to go play a championship high school ball game to win their first championship in school history.
Oh, it was the first. Wow. How special is that?
The previous year they were runner up 1-0.
Okay.
And there's an interesting story with that. It certainly wasn't Nora, is my daughter's name. It wasn't her fault that they lost. But, there was a lot of missteps in the game where we actually could have probably pulled that game out.
Sure.
But ultimately, the other team had a runner in scoring position. It was like 2 outs, ball hit to outfield, fly ball, and Nora couldn't get to it. It was a tough catch, couldn't get it, but she took it personal. As soon as that season was over and she digested a loss or a runner-up finish, she went to the gym every day, I would say for 3 hours a day. She probably put on 20 pounds of pure lean muscle.
Wow.
And came back her senior year and was a force to reckon with. I mean, to tell you, she was on a mission. Incredible teammates, most of which she had played all along through travel ball.
Sure.
So yeah, it was special for a lot of families, especially us. We have invested so much time and love into the game. It was a great joy. And since she was able to accomplish that, going out, graduating high school, championship belt, I'm content with that.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of the decisions she's made. And unfortunately, it's not to play collegiate ball, at least at this moment.
Yeah.
And she's going for a purely academic track and the college experience. She had the opportunity to go play at some other schools, of which weren't on her wish list of schools.
Sure.
So ultimately, she went to the school. Her first choice was UVA. She didn't get in. Even with a 4.4, she was not even close, I don't think. So she went to her second choice, which was JMU, and I'm sure she's going to be living the life.
That's great. And she's enrolled in the nursing program, you said, which would be
she's taking the core classes to enroll into the
Sure.
nursing. I think you can enroll into the nursing program maybe junior year or a second semester of sophomore year.
Okay.
But initially, yeah, you have to kind of jump through some hoops.
Yeah. So with that, that you mentioned grades, and that's something that, I keep trying to convince my oldest son to kind of try to get in with high school teams and talk to him about the experience that he saw as a collegiate player, and the fact that, I need to ask you this. I don't know if the numbers are similar as far as scholarship availability for Division I, but in baseball, it's 11.7. Doesn't matter how good you are. There's 11.7 scholarships.
I think it's less than that in softball.
Yeah, and so the academics
golf is up there a little bit higher.
Yeah, in my opinion, the academics aren't stressed enough by coaches, by recruiters. That that team's carrying 25 kids, whether it's men's baseball or women's softball, right. and the math isn't good unless you've got the academics to back it up.
Exactly. And I think she could have very much so played for JMU, but the reality was she wasn't recruited by JMU. She wasn't noticed. And that may be just bad luck. It could have been that we didn't travel to the right showcase tournaments.
Yeah.
They're doing travel ball a lot. I mean, if you're trying to have your child play collegiate sports, the best way to probably go about meeting that goal is to go to those coaches' camps that they have.
Right.
Instructional camps. If you keep showing up at their camps, they'll come looking for you at the showcase tournaments. You don't have to wait for them to just stumble across and say and hope that your child makes a miracle play when the coach you want happens to be looking. Sometimes that happens, and it's very rare.
It is. And you're right. And that's a great point, though, about the camps.
Yeah.
I never even thought about. We were always told, well, the only way to do it, you've got to fly to Arizona and do the showcase event for this or that. But that's a great, if they know where they want to end up, that's a great point.
Right. Unfortunately, a lot of these showcase tournaments are cash grabs for the organizer.
Totally.
It's a cash grab. And, we would go to, 4 or 5 different sanctioned showcase tournaments, but they would always be the same rotation of the same colleges and even the same teams. So you're playing the same teams from one tournament to the next for the same coaches from one tournament to the next, and you're paying an awful lot of money to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying take that away, because you have to practice and you have to play good competition.
No doubt.
Keep it high. But the specialized, more smaller school camps are the way to get noticed.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a particular school you want to play for, that's how it gets done.
No, that's a really good piece of advice. And it's so funny. My son and I always joke that we really only did a couple of showcase events, and there were only 2 teams that even took notice in him as a senior in high school. And it was the New York Yankees and a junior college in Arizona. He ended up getting drafted by the Yankees, but he ended up playing for the junior college. They ended up winning the national championship that year, which was a great experience.
Right.
And the way things went and worked out, he never had another chance to play pro ball. But unlike his mom and I, he's perfectly at peace with that now.
Right.
We're still kind of thinking the what ifs, and somehow we need to get past that, because he's definitely moved on, and his wife is ensured that he's going to move on at this point. So Yeah, that's a really good piece of advice. And college sports is you're working two jobs. I mean, that's nothing new for you, but that's
Oh,
two
yeah,
full-time gigs. I don't care what
absolutely,
sport it is. All right,
absolutely.
so that's cool, and I appreciate your thoughts on that, because it's something I think we as guys who've been through it with our kids, I think it's something that we can share and maybe inject a little bit of reality into the whole process, because you can spend. I've got a lot of friends who've spent enough to put their kids through college just getting them exposed, but there's a disconnect between looking at it that way and reality, I think. So
The flip side to that coin, though, is you have to have a kid that has the drive, wants it.
100%.
I've seen a lot of kids play ball because their parents want them to.
Yep.
Or they go play showcases all over the place because their parents want them to.
Right.
And there was a period several years ago, a few years ago, where my daughter was, I think, getting burnout and disinterested.
Right.
Something lit. She changed travel ball teams, which kind of reignited her passion, and that snowballed into her high school career, which was she only played junior and senior year in high school.
Oh,
she
no kidding.
ran track prior to that.
Oh, wow.
That's a whole nother long story of why she run track instead of play softball. But yeah, she's moved on. I hope to see her play again one day in some way, shape, or form.
Well, good for you. Good for you. That's cool. All right. So in the interest of time, I want to move on to some other stuff. So as an equipment manager at two different golf courses, one of the things I wanted to ask you, I love the perspective of different departments and how they interact and how they team up to make successful operations. From your perspective, what makes a successful golf maintenance operation?
Work ethic.
Yeah.
Whether it's the superintendent, I've worked for a superintendent that was very complacent, liked to grow grass from his office chair somehow or another.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't grow grass very well. I like to see others taking pride in their work and not just cashing a paycheck, but creating a product that, when I walk on a golf course, I want to see perfect conditions, and I know very ambitious to get that or to expect that, because certainly I'm not a superintendent. I know that they have a really difficult job, especially being the face of the maintenance department, having to deal with members and owners. But for me, the relationships between all employees, it's not just superintendent, equipment manager, or assistants, and it's from top to bottom. Everyone needs to support the next. So sometimes it gets a little frustrating when you see somebody transporting a mower at seemingly 30 miles an hour down a bumpy path, and your mower is sitting there bouncing up and down on the trailer. It gets frustrating to see that. And, whereas otherwise they're a good operator and a good employee, they're just careless sometimes, getting in a hurry.
Yeah.
You need to go and support them, tell them what they're doing right, and,
make a correction. Yeah.
I never yell at anybody. Nothing upsets me. You can come tell me you broke anything, and it's just something. It's my job is to fix it.
All right. So that's what I was hoping you would say, because I've had two different kinds of equipment mechanics in my time. The ones that respond and react to, whether it's whether it's carelessness or whether it's a complete accident to damage on equipment with that kind of attitude versus, you know,
The rinse throwers.
yeah, or the, you know, the scowlers with the what the hell did you break this time sort of mentality, you know,
Right.
that creates a culture that is toxic, and they won't come to you after a while.
Tell you. Then
Yeah.
they won't come tell you.
Yeah.
They'll put something and just leave it, and then it becomes a mystery of how it happened.
That's right. It wasn't me, and I don't know. Right.
The vast majority of, you know, we'll say a crashed reel or something. You know, you hit something in the mowing a fairway, you hit a bolt that fell out of another machine, or anything, a ball marker on a green.
Right.
It's not their fault. You know, it's hard to see that stuff as you're mowing along. You can't look 1 foot in front of you.
That's right.
And mow a straight line. It's not their fault. So to treat them like it is their fault is doing the golf course a disservice, for sure.
100%. So do you think that the fact that you play golf and that you've been a caddy and you understand the game, do you think that strengthens the position of the equipment manager?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. You know, I'm a relatively newbie to the golf industry. I became equipment guy 2015. 7 years. 7 years deep I am.
So we should back up and how did you get into it? I mean, obviously you had connections, but did you have training? I mean, I couldn't just pick up a wrench and start working.
I had zero golf course maintenance training.
And now you're running 2 facilities.
Indeed.
So how?
So,
self-taught?
All right. Well, you know, my whole life, aside from being in the playground equipment business, growing up through high school, any spare time I had, I've always built motors, you know, motorcycles. Even back when I was a kid, disassembling my bicycle down to every single putting it back together. I'm very mechanically inclined.
So you've got the mechanical
Grew
mind.
up from a very young age in a wood shop, and have learned woodworking at a very high level very early on in my life. And
from whom?
My father.
Your father. Okay. We'll get to that in a little bit here.
So, I've, you know, in my younger years, I've always just been interested in reading wood magazines, hot VWs, you know, tech magazines to learn how things work. You know, TV shows. YouTube was one of the greatest things ever to come along. Type in any subject you want, and there's others showing you how things work.
No doubt.
So yeah, I've always had a very inquisitive mechanical mind, and been pretty handy.
So when you sit, go ahead.
I was caddying, and you know, the winters caddying becomes really slow, and I was trying to find ways to make more money, and so I was working at one of the club members where his business, helping him through the winter.
Okay.
Well, I have another friend who had moved to Florida and was a assistant superintendent at a club down there, and he used to, I guess, surf TurfNet job listings all the time, just like on a daily basis. And he ran across an ad for 2 golf courses, literally 5 minutes from my house. And he replied to the ad, not with a resume for him, but with a phone number for me to the superintendent, and never told me about it.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Never told me. I had no idea. So one day I'm just driving along and I get a phone call from the superintendent at a golf club 5 minutes from my house. And he says, "I hear you're looking for a job."
Who is this?
I was like, exactly. Who is this? This is, his name is Kevin McIntyre. He was, at the time, he was the superintendent at Royal New Kent, Stranch Design, which is a really nice course close to the house. He says, "I understand you're looking for a job and you're the man for it." Well, my buddy knew my skill set.
Sure.
Clearly, he knew I could do anything. And I was like, I think you got the wrong number. First of all, I don't know a single thing about golf course equipment.
Right.
I think you got the wrong guy. And I tried to ditch the phone call, but he was like, hey, man, I'm in a bad spot. Can you just come over and talk to me? Huh. So I went over and I humored him and my buddy who had passed along my phone number. And he started showing me around. I was like, yeah, it's nothing. A motor is a motor is a motor. They may be shaped differently, but they all require three things to run. And he showed me nothing that I didn't feel like I could fix.
That's awesome.
Then it came down to the sharpening, and I had a guy come over for about an hour to show me how the Foley operated. Mm-hmm. I read the Foley manual inside and out multiple times. Tried to research it. There's not a whole lot of real theory information at that time, seemingly, or either that or I was inept at finding it. I don't know. But I basically taught myself how to grind reels, and I understood the machines and how the machine worked.
Right.
Because I have a wood lathe, and I just created it to. It's a metal. It's a type of lathe. Yeah. Essentially for sharpening reels.
Right.
So I was comfortable working with exact details, thousands of inches and all that. It didn't take me long to figure out a reel grinder. But saying that, there's still plenty I can learn about grinding reels and reel theory and different turf types, and how the different angles affect different cuts and different applications. I've got a pretty good hand on it at the moment. But yeah, I'm a sponge. I'm always interested in that techie kind of stuff that most people, especially a superintendent, has no interest in most of the time learning.
Now, do you have people working underneath you at both facilities?
I wish I did, and I'm pushing for a guy over at the Federal Club just to kind of do more of the PM service kind of stuff and keep that rolling along. And someone that I can, teach and learn with at the same time.
Yep.
And develop someone that can be an asset.
So obviously you came to the industry later.
Yep.
No previous experience. Where in your from your point of view, equipment techs are the hardest, in my opinion. They're the hardest position to fill. Assistants are getting to be really tough too, but equipment techs are really, really difficult. Where should superintendents be looking that isn't on the radar right now for talent? Because there's going to be a lot. We're both in our 50s. Hopefully we won't be working until we're 100. And you go into most shops and most of the equipment techs are a little bit older. So where is the next generation coming from? Where should they be looking that they're not thinking about right now?
I think in the past, a lot of times superintendents or anybody seeking a technician position would find someone in a similar field, whether it's a motorcycle mechanic or auto mechanic. And that's fine. But a lot of those guys are so set in their ways with the way automobile mechanic shops work, working on commission,
and they're pretty well paid too.
And they are very well paid if they're good mechanics.
Yeah.
A lot of them aren't great mechanics, but they just happen to be in that field. And what happens with those guys is they take a lot longer than a good mechanic to accomplish whatever task they're doing.
Sure.
It ends up costing them because they're getting paid a flat rate for a particular job. As far as to answer your question, where to look for those guys, that's the $1 million question. And if I had the answer to that question, I'd make a lot of superintendents happy. But I think they need to really think more outside of the box find someone that has skill sets in whether it's fabricating, welding, woodworking, things like carpentry.
Right.
If someone knows how things go together and come apart and how to tackle different challenges when they present themselves, you can train somebody
Yep.
to do anything you want if they have the work ethic, the commitment to learn, and passion.
I think we're learning that on the assistant side too, that, the guys, the number of schools pushing out assistant candidates are fewer and fewer every year, but every club's got a handful of guys on the crew that have a great attitude and a great work ethic. And I think a lot of superintendents are looking to that direction. There's no reason why that couldn't work for your position as well.
Right. And the thing is, with those good superintendents that are around, if they're really that good of a assistant superintendent, they don't stay assistants very long.
Yeah.
They find their own path,
Yeah.
which leads a superintendent on the search for yet another assistant.
That's right.
And the pool of assistants incoming is definitely a challenge at the moment. I know at both of our golf courses, finding irrigation techs or young assistants that want to come in and learn. And I don't know if it's definitely, we feel it because we're in the golf business, but that's across all industries, finding employees in,
100%.
Everyone seems to, I don't know how people are making their money and paying their bills because there's a plethora of jobs available.
Yeah.
They can't fill them.
Yeah. Like you said, in every industry.
Everybody?
I've been asking that question for a year now. It just doesn't
They're working at home. That's where I think they still reside in their lives, is work as little as possible for as much as they can.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a 16-year-old, unfortunately, that's kind of trying to take that tack. I said, dude, you've got to have a resume before you can ask for things like that.
They're pretty creative on ways to make money, though. I have to give it to some of these kids are making a lot of money filming TikToks.
He keeps telling me that, and I said, that there's still 1 in a million. I know there's some millionaires out there, but that's still 1 in a million. Kind of an oddball question. Do you, as far as tracking PM work and parts, that kind of thing, are you a pen and paper guy, or are you do you have a software package you work with at either?
I don't have a software package. I dabbled with my turf for a while, but it seemed, I don't know, maybe I'm just old school and archaic in my mentality with computer work, but it just took so long to do
the data entry,
entering data, and setting it up to begin with all your equipment. And no, I'm more of a pen and paper. I've got a file for each piece of equipment, typically.
I'm always curious, because you get some guys that are so into it that way, and other guys that are just, because they've been there for a while, they know the cycles and
right.
Yeah.
As far as parts go and tracking parts, at every course that I've come to, I've inherited a hodgepodge of parts that seemingly go to nothing that we even have. And that you could order a bunch of spare hydraulic motors or, motor controllers for the e-gator, the e-mowers. But they end up, you cycle through the piece of equipment and never use that inventory that you bought as a spare, just in case it happened one day when in the middle of a cut.
Right.
And so you have a $1,700 component sitting on a shelf that you don't even own the equipment that it fits anymore.
Yeah, the wrinkle in that theory, though, now is you may not be able to get that part.
Right. So the whole just in time sort of thing isn't really as reliable as it used to be. Exactly. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
So we've just got at the Federal Club, we are slowly getting in our new package. When I came there May of last year, quickly identified that there was a need for equipment. They had been with a mechanic that mailed it in for literally 2 years, I think.
Hmm.
And the equipment was in very bad condition.
Yeah.
Slowly got that stuff up to speed, but was able to push through a very large new package of Toro, starting to slowly trickle in. With that, I'm sure there'll be plenty of things that I will start more of the consumable type stuff.
Yeah.
That can go on the shelf that I can have on hand. But
You,
for the most part, big expensive components, I let them sit on the distributor shelf.
yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you try to have quite a bit of input as far as the equipment replacement program, things like that? I mean, are you giving your guys a heads up?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
think that's really critical, and it's something that seems to not always happen, that relationship and that communication between the equipment manager and the superintendent doesn't always work, but it's a team deal. You know
right.
What's going on.
Well, at least at the Federal Club, it was obvious what we needed, and it was practically everything. And that's not an exaggeration.
Right.
So I presented what I thought would be a good fit for all the equipment. And, we've made changes with the superintendent at the time to tweaks what I had asked for. And together we were able to get it through. But yeah, long-term planning, saying, hey, man, just the other day we had a little chat about what we want to spend money on in the next 2 or 3 years. And,
right.
New grinders, our grinders are fine, but I can tell you in 2 to 3 years, we're going to need to look at replacing those.
Yeah.
And that's something that he would have never crossed his mind, some superintendents are more savvy about the equipment and the tools required to maintain that equipment.
Yeah, but let's be honest, John, they're only savvy because of the input you guys have.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because we got superintendents have enough on their plate. They have to be able to trust the equipment techs.
Just like I don't know how
that's right,
the chemistry of chemicals work and the concoctions that they put in sprayers to go put on the course. I don't know. I know a few names of the products and sort of what they do, but I don't know how that stuff works. And,
but you know that when the spray tech hops on that sprayer, that key better turn over that engine, right? And it better not be leaking.
It better work.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we've met John Murray, the girl dad. We've met John Murray, the equipment tech. We've met John Murray, the caddy. Now let's talk about. I got to check my time. So let's talk about John Murray, the luthier and the woodworker. You are truly a Renaissance man. I'm still looking at my watch thinking, okay, there's 24 hours in a day and I don't know how this guy does this. So you mentioned you've done woodworking pretty much your whole life, learned it from your dad.
Yeah.
You did dabble in some woodworking when the 2008 market crash hit and you were trying to do that. How did you get into building guitars? Because and I got to thank you first for sending a bunch of great pictures. If you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're not, I'd encourage you to go to our YouTube channel and check out the little slideshow that's going, because John builds some phenomenal guitars. And as a woodworker, I certainly appreciate your craftsmanship and your attention to detail. It's pretty cool. So how did you get into that? Are you a guitar player?
No, I am not a guitar. I really don't have a musical background. I can dabble with playing a guitar a little bit now. But
are your customers surprised about that? Because that's kind of something that usually goes hand in hand, right?
Yes, but I like to equate it to the guy that builds a race car, can he go win the Daytona 500?
Okay. Yeah, good point.
So I know what goes into a guitar.
Right.
I know what it takes to build the guitar. And through talking with a lot of different musicians and getting their input, I've learned what they expect from a guitar.
Okay.
And the challenge there is to meet those requirements and have a guitar literally stay together and perform.
Yeah, I've had people ask me if I knew or if I could build them a guitar, and I said, you know what, that's a whole different level of woodworking that I'm not ready to dive into.
I can tell you that I will assure you that you can.
Okay.
I would encourage you to try.
Well, one of these days.
I got into it in 2008. I joined Facebook.
Okay.
And like most people who freshly join Facebook, you get a flood of connections from the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran across a guy I went to high school with who turned out to be a singer-songwriter out in Nashville. And I hadn't seen him literally high school. And we got to chit-chatting back and forth and learned a little bit about what we do. And he found out that I did woodwork. And he asked me to build him a guitar, just kind of more jokingly. Well, you don't ever challenge me to anything. I'll take it up.
Right.
So for literally, it took me a year to build the first guitar I ever built, because I did a tremendous amount of research, reading books, some of the classic, William Cupiano has a nice book. Irving Sloan is one of the old time classic builders that has some books out. So I read those books. To build a guitar requires a lot of different fixtures and jigs,
clamps, and all that stuff,
and specialized stuff just in order to make a guitar. Right. Aside from building the guitar itself. So I had to learn how to do that and build it. So I did that. It took a year to build the first guitar. It was a challenge, but that guitar turned out fabulous. You know, I went out to Nashville to present it to my buddy I hadn't seen since high school. It was a great time. He was in the business, took it around to some studios and some other musicians, and everyone was enthralled by the fact that it was my first guitar and it was awesome.
Wow. Acoustic?
I think some of them were being a little polite because I could it was so flawed and looking back on it. But it was an awesome guitar, but there was a lot of flaws.
Typical woodworker, always pointing out his flaws, right?
Right. So from there, I was energized, and I have an addictive personality kind of thing. If I find something I really develop a passion for or interest in, I go head first. And so I went on a quest to build the perfect guitar. So yeah, I started pumping out some guitars after kind of refining the process.
And are you focused primarily on acoustics or
strictly acoustics?
Okay.
To be honest, I've never built an electric guitar. Okay. I've made many repairs on electric guitars, but I've never literally built an electric guitar because I always viewed it as a cutting board with a neck, Yeah. So I wanted more of a challenge than that, and the acoustic guitar definitely presents that.
How many have you built?
At this stage, maybe 25. All instruments combined, maybe 25, 30.
And who are you selling them to?
Anybody that wants them. I haven't been very diligent about building in the past couple years.
Okay. Yeah, you've had a few things on your plate.
Right. So I built a lot early on. I still own some that I haven't ever sold. It's more of a labor of love than a consistent income stream.
Sure. So if I want a John Murray guitar made out of spruce and done the right way, what am I going to need to give up for that?
Most of my commissions would start at about $2,500.
Okay.
And from there, the sky's the limit.
Okay, so another question then. Do you do your own finishing?
I do.
And what's the method? Are you a sprayer? Or?
I've done both. I've done French polishing.
Okay.
Sprayed lacquer.
Do you have a preference over the two?
I prefer lacquer. It's a more durable finish.
French polish is tedious.
And it's not very durable, unless you take a lot of classical guitars are French polished.
Right.
For an acoustic guitar that gets gigged and, for the most part, a lacquer finish is the go-to finish.
How many coats?
There's some water-based finishes out there now too that are really good.
Really? I like them for a lot of reasons, but boy, I just find them not to give the same depth. If you've got a really pretty wood to work with, it doesn't seem, maybe you found a trick. We'll have to talk about it.
If you have a highly figured piece of wood, nothing beats a good oil finish with a French polish on top. That's where you're going to get extreme depth and of the figure. And
you've got a Facebook page for just kind of dedicated to that side of your life.
Murray Guitars.
Murray Guitars. Yeah, it's a fascinating ride, and hopefully some of these pictures are showing up that you can check out. Is your shop at your home?
It is at my house.
Nice.
In 2005, I built a shop a couple years after I had been in the house, and it's close to 1,000 square foot, very well equipped.
But not big enough, right?
Never big enough.
Mine's about a third of that size.
You can never have enough shop space. You can never have enough clamps.
Yeah, boy, isn't that the truth? Even my wife knows that now. She said, I think it's from what's the couple that does the home and HGTV show? It's
the Magnolia people.
No, Ben and Aaron, because Ben's a woodworker, right?
Right.
Home time, I think, and he always says that never can have enough clamps, and so she's finally accepted that my wall full of clamps is probably not enough.
Right. Just every year for Christmas, and your stocking gives you 2 sexy clamps.
Exactly. So, okay. So we're kind of wrapping up time. And like I told you before we got on, I always do a lightning round, and there's a method of my madness with yours, but you can't think about it. It's just first thing that pops into your head. So, beer or wine?
Wine.
Or bourbon?
Definitely not bourbon.
Okay, good. Here's one that's custom made for you. Biggest pet peeve in the shop, and it can't be losing a 10mm wrench.
Pet peeve in the shop. I mean, I think all techs will say a dirty reel.
Yeah, good one.
I mean that's you should exclude that one along with the 10mm.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but you're right.
A dirty reel is unacceptable in my opinion,
especially if it's on a lift and the first thing you do is turn the reel and it's raining down clippings on you, right?
In most people's defense, it's hard to clean some of those back reels on a fairway mower unless you have special spray wands and stuff. Sometimes when I have to go clean, I'll actually put them on the wash pad and put them in backlap mode.
Yeah.
And let them spin while I'm hosing them down. It helps a lot, but I don't trust anybody else to do that. This is a
don't do as I say, not as I do. But we actually had 5-gallon pails that we would set on the seat with full of water so that the guys could run the reels. Yeah. I don't think OSHA would really approve of that, but it was a means to an end.
Right.
Biggest pet peeve in woodworking. I'll tell you mine. Mine's the finishing process, because I'm a perfectionist and it drives me insane.
Finishing is an art to itself.
Yep.
Finishing is a total different realm from woodworking. Finishing is extremely difficult, and it can be frustrating for sure. Most of it has to do with prep and experience, but it's, yeah, finishing is frustrating. Getting a bug in your finish.
Yep.
Everybody, or a bubble, or a grease spot, or something that was on the wood before you sprayed, and now you have a fisheye and you have to work that out. It never goes well, and that is especially true with guitars because the finish is typically very thin. And like every aspect of building a guitar, there's so much effort put into each phase of building it.
Right.
It makes the next phase much more stressful and critical to not mess it up, because then you've lost all that previous work.
Yeah.
So it's there's a lot of pressure to build each step as you go. But yes, pet peeve in the wood shop, a dull chisel.
Yeah, that's a good one. And do you set aside time to sharpen?
Not enough, but yes, I did.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's something I've got to get better at, is having sharp tools, because you're right. There's nothing worse than a dull chisel or a dull plane, for that matter.
Right. It's got to be beyond surgically sharp.
And on that subject, I think that's one class that I will, besides my mom making me take typing class in high school, and now I think it's called keyboarding or computer something, but it was typing on an old IBM when I was in high school. But besides that, I think taking a class on proper sharpening techniques was the best investment I've made.
Absolutely.
Took a class with Rob Kosman, who's probably one of the better known guys in honing and sharpening, and he did a great job of teaching us.
Do you use a Tormek system, or
I don't. I'm a stone guy.
Stone guy.
Yeah.
Or sandpaper.
I've done both. I've got both. I feel like it's kind of like your water-based finish idea. I feel like it's cheating when I use the sandpaper, but it works just as well.
Right. But if you use it on a good sheet of glass or slab of granite, it's always flat. You can always get a fresh edge on your sandpaper. Whereas with water stones, you have to be very cognizant of its flatness.
Yeah.
A lot of work to just maintain your stones. And then as soon as you start sharpening a tool, you can't sharpen but so many tools before you really have to put attention back into your device or your stone.
Yep.
So that's a challenge with sharpening. So sandpaper is very viable, at least in the early stages of sharpening, and then go to your water stones.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. Favorite species of wood to work with?
To work with, or to look? Okay, to work with. I mean, it's hard to beat mahogany.
You're right. You got to split it into two categories. To work
it's hard
with.
to beat mahogany, or poplar. I mean, the things that machine easy, that don't eat up your knives, the ones that aren't full of silica and really just dull everything that they go through. I think my favorite wood to look at and to see on anything would be a highly figured tiger maple or flame maple. I do like walnut a lot, but I get frustrated with working with walnut because there's a lot of waste. I mean, you can have a perfectly straight board and rip it down the middle one time, and next thing you know, you have two bananas.
Yeah.
It grows so much stress in the grain that as soon as you start milling a piece, it changes its shape, and that's not good for building things a lot of times.
Stress could be one of the properties that brings the beautiful look too, though. So it's
right.
It's a double-edged sword, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So
there's a lot of woods though.
Yeah.
That I'm very fond of.
So back to equipment, red or green?
Red.
All right.
All the way.
This is one I ask a lot of superintendents.
No, go back. Except for Pro Gators, I like a Pro Gator better than the Toro HD. Sorry, Toro.
Even with the goofy transmission, where they should have taken two of the 5 gears out.
I like the program. They seem with my experience with them, they're pretty reliable, and I like the way they drive better. And
Cool.
That's
fair. That's fair. Like I said, I've asked a lot of superintendents this, but I've never gotten your side of the industry. Best innovation in equipment in your time or in the last 10 years, let's say.
Best innovation in equipment. Ooh. I would say the advancement of grinding machines. If that, that's more of a tool than equipment.
Right. That counts though.
From just looking back at some older grinders that I've seen some guys that are still using, they seem pretty archaic to me and really difficult to get good results with.
Yeah. But it's such a cornerstone of everything in the operation.
And then you got, the simplex grinders out there, and Mike Rollins, who really does a great job representing that company in that product. I have no experience with them, but they looked intriguing. I look forward to maybe a demo one day, maybe closer when I'm getting ready to get some new grinders.
Sure.
Innovation though with equipment. I'm only 7 years into this whole career of mine, so
true.
I'm kind of narrow-minded when it comes to that. But I like the Triflex. That's not really that new compared to some of the older mowers that I've had to work on and deal with. The Triflex is definitely a unique setup.
Yeah, you can tell on that piece of equipment that they had somebody like yourself over the engineer's shoulder all the time.
Right. So
they make it pretty user friendly.
A lot of people at high-end clubs, are, and for a lot of reasons, they walk mow their greens, and there's a lot of advantages to walk mowing your greens. But with labor shortages that everyone is dealing with right now, and time constraints with golfers on the course, and you have to get out of their way, and a Triflex.
And the improvement in the quality of the cut, right?
Right. I can tell you that we mow at Kanawha Club exclusively with a Triflex, and we feel we get a better cut than walk mowing.
I think a lot that conversation has come up a lot on social media, and I think that the argument is getting a lot narrower than it used to be. That you're not sacrificing something by using a triplex.
There's a lot of stubborn guys out there that are committed to their walk mow philosophies, and that's fine. It's the way I look at it too is Triflex is less invasive to a golf course mowing than someone walking back and forth across the green. However many times they have to walk across that with the mower, so you're isolating your weight and compaction just via your walking back and forth. You're trampling to death.
And the labor shortage is going to push that faster than anything. I think it's just going to become a necessity that a lot of guys are going to face, I think, in the near future. So
the aesthetics is why I think the vast majority of people who walk mow their greens, that's purely aesthetics.
No doubt. Well, like I told you, it would go pretty quick, and we're a little over an hour. I'm really glad I got you on it. We covered all the bases I wanted to cover. Hopefully you got something out of it as well. But
absolutely, thanks a lot. I'm extremely humbled to be asked to come on your podcast.
I'm so glad I did.
I must admit that I've only had listened to the podcast once or twice along the way, past year or so, and I went back knowing that I was going to come on and went through a very esteemed list of guests you've had on your show. Ross Miller, I kind of binged on some episodes.
Yeah.
Miller, I had the opportunity to meet him at the senior amateur last year when I went out and caddied there.
What a great guy.
What a class guy that guy. And he is one of those kind of guys that I would love to work for.
Yeah.
I could work for him in an instant.
Hey, me too.
He has so much passion for what he does. And I'm not saying the guys that I work with now don't have that passion, because they very much so do.
Yeah.
But what a class guy that was. And of course, Hector. I've had some interactions with Hector. We had a little wrench making challenge where we had to hand forge a knife from a 7/8 wrench. We had a little challenge, and I'll let Hector tell you how that worked out for him. But
I'm guessing you beat him.
Yes, your list of guests was very impressive. I've listened to several of them now, and I'm very humbled by being asked to come.
Well,
on.
I for one, I really enjoy highlighting the guys that really make it happen in the background, and I think that your position is so critically important to the success of the operation. And I'm glad we got to meet on video. That's one of these days we'll have to bump.
One of these days we'll meet in person, and we'll have a cocktail or a beer or a wine
or a glass of wine. That's exactly right.
There you go.
John Murray, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and have a great rest of the season, and stick around for a minute. We'll talk offline. Thanks.